The crystal chandelier cast fractured light across the five-star restaurant as Alexander Hunt watched something impossible unfold. His mother, the woman who'd retreated into silence after losing her hearing, who hadn't smiled in public for 3 years, was laughing. Actually laughing. And the shy waitress with trembling hands who'd been pouring water moments ago was the reason why. What Alexander did next would transform not just their lives, but challenge everything his wealthy world believed about value, worth, and what it truly means to see another person. Emma Rodriguez had been working at the Sterling Room for exactly 11 days when she made her first real mistake. The exclusive restaurant catered to Manhattan's elite, and Emma, a 24-year-old from Queens who'd learned English as her third language, was barely holding on. Her hands shook when she carried expensive bottles of wine. Her voice caught when she tried to recite the elaborate menu descriptions. The other servers whispered that she wouldn't last a month. She was refilling water glasses at table 7 when she noticed the older woman sitting alone, looking lost and uncomfortable. The woman's son, Emma recognized him from the Forbes magazine her father read religiously, Alexander Hunt, tech billionaire and venture capitalist, was across the room, deep in conversation with a group of suited businessmen. The woman kept glancing at the menu, confusion and something like sadness crossing her elegant features. Emma watched as a server approached the woman, speaking loudly and slowly, the way people do when they assume volume compensates for language barriers. The woman's face flushed with embarrassment. She pointed at something on the menu, but the server clearly didn't understand what she wanted. Emma saw the woman's hands move slightly, instinctively, then drop to her lap as if she'd thought better of it. And Emma understood immediately. Without thinking, without considering the restaurant's strict protocol about servers sticking to their assigned sections, Emma approached the table. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She was already on thin ice with the head manager. But something in the woman's eyes, that specific kind of isolation Emma knew too well, pulled her forward. Emma's hands began to move in fluid, graceful gestures. She was signing. "Good evening," her hands said in American Sign Language. "My name is Emma. Can I help you?" The woman's eyes went wide. Her hands flew up immediately, moving with desperate relief. "You sign?" "Oh, thank God. I've been sitting here feeling invisible. My son thinks I'm fine, but everyone talks around me like I'm not here." "What would you like to eat?" Emma signed, a warm smile spreading across her usually anxious face. "I can help translate to the kitchen." For the next 10 minutes, Emma and Mrs. Catherine Hunt had a full conversation. Catherine's face transformed from that polite mask wealthy people wear to something genuine and alive. They talked about the menu, yes, but also about Catherine's frustration with restaurants that had no accessibility options, about how people either shouted at her or avoided her entirely, about how lonely it was to sit in rooms full of people and understand nothing. "My son means well," Catherine signed, glancing toward Alexander, "but he's so busy trying to protect me that he doesn't see I'm dying inside. I used to be a professor. I used to give lectures to hundreds of people. Now I can barely order dinner." Emma felt tears prick her eyes. "You're not invisible," she signed. "Not to me." "How did you learn to sign?" Catherine asked. Emma's hands moved softly, carefully. "My little brother. He was born deaf. I learned when I was 7 years old because I wanted to talk to him. He died when he was 12, heart condition, but signing. It's how I keep him close. It's like we're still talking." Catherine reached across the table and squeezed Emma's hand. Neither of them noticed that Alexander Hunt had abandoned his business associates and was standing 15 feet away watching the entire exchange, or that he was filming it on his phone, or that his eyes were glistening with unshed tears. Emma took Catherine's order, made sure the kitchen understood the specific modifications she wanted, and checked back 3 times during the meal. Each time, she and Catherine would sign for a few moments, nothing elaborate, just simple exchanges that made Catherine smile. The other servers watched with barely concealed contempt. Who did this nervous little waitress think she was, spending so much time at one table? When the meal was finished, Alexander finally returned to sit with his mother. Emma approached with the check, her anxiety returning now that she had to face the famous billionaire directly. But before she could set down the leather folder, Alexander stood. "Wait," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Please." Emma froze, certain she'd overstepped, that she was about to be fired or complained about. Her work visa flashed through her mind, the money she sent home to her parents, the rent due next week. But Alexander wasn't angry. His eyes were red. "My mother lost her hearing 3 years ago," he said quietly. "Sudden sensorineural hearing loss. One day she woke up and the world was silent. I've hired the best doctors, the best audiologists, tried every treatment. But what I didn't do, what I failed to do, was learn to sign. I told myself she could read lips, that technology would help, that she'd adapt. I was so focused on fixing the problem that I didn't see what she really needed. Someone to talk to. Someone who could communicate in her language." His voice broke. "Thank you. Thank you for seeing her." Emma didn't know what to say. She signed to Catherine. "Your son is very kind," Catherine signed back. "Tell him he's also very stubborn and needs to take ASL classes immediately." Emma found herself translating, a shy smile breaking through. Alexander laughed, a genuine, startled sound, and nodded emphatically. "Yes, I'll start tomorrow. Today. Right now if I could." What happened next caught everyone off guard. Alexander asked Emma to sit. The head manager started to intervene. Servers didn't sit with guests, especially not during prime dinner hours, but Alexander's sharp look stopped him cold. Emma perched nervously on the edge of a chair. "How long have you been signing?" Alexander asked. 17 years, Emma answered quietly. "And you work here as a waitress?" It wasn't a question, but there was something in his tone, a kind of wonder. "What did you do before this?" Emma hesitated. "I was a teacher in Mexico. I taught at a school for deaf children. But when I came here, my credentials didn't transfer. I'm working on certification, but it takes time and money and—" She trailed off, embarrassed to be sharing so much. Catherine was signing rapidly to Alexander, who could only catch maybe 1 word in 10. Emma translated without being asked. "She says the world is full of people with the wrong jobs. She says you should fix that." Alexander looked at his mother, then at Emma, then back at his mother. Something was forming in his mind. Emma could see the wheels turning, the same expression her father got when solving a complicated problem. "I run a foundation," Alexander said slowly. "The Hunt Initiative. We fund educational programs, technology development, accessibility projects. We have money, lots of money. What we don't have is someone who truly understands the deaf community, someone who's lived it, someone who can help us actually reach the people we're trying to serve instead of just throwing money at problems." He paused, looking Emma directly in the eyes. "We've been doing it all wrong. Our board meetings are full of hearing people making decisions about deaf accessibility. It's performative at best, harmful at worst. We need someone who can call us out, guide us, connect us with the community. Someone like you." Emma's heart was racing. "Mr. Hunt, I'm just a waitress. I don't have experience with foundations or—" "You have 17 years of signing experience," he interrupted gently. "You taught deaf children. You saw my mother across a crowded room and recognized her isolation. And you know what it's like to feel invisible yourself, don't you? To be in a place where you don't quite belong, where people look past you?" Emma couldn't speak. She nodded. "I'd like to offer you a position," Alexander said. "Director of Community Engagement for the Hunt Initiative. Your job would be to help us completely reimagine our approach to accessibility programs. You'd work directly with the deaf community, with schools, with families. You'd teach our entire organization, starting with me, how to actually see and serve people instead of just funding programs that look good on paper." The restaurant had gone quiet, Other diners were watching now, sensing something significant was happening. "I can't just," Emma started, but Catherine reached across the table and took both her hands. Catherine signed, and this time she spoke aloud too, her voice careful and unpracticed from years of disuse. "Please, help us! Help other people like me feel less alone!" Emma's tears finally spilled over. She'd spent so long feeling like she didn't fit anywhere, too Mexican for New York, too poor for Manhattan, too unqualified for the job she was trained for. "And now this." "Yes," she whispered, then signed it clearly. "Yes." Alexander pulled out his phone, the same phone that had been recording earlier, and showed Emma the video he'd taken of her conversation with his mother. "I've been watching this on loop for the past hour," he admitted. "Not because it's extraordinary, but because it should be ordinary. This kind of connection, this kind of basic human communication, it should happen everywhere, all the time. The fact that my mother was shocked to meet someone who could sign to her in a Manhattan restaurant is insane. That's what we're going to change." The next 3 months were a whirlwind. Emma left the Sterling room amid a mixture of jealousy and genuine happiness from her co-workers. She moved from her cramped Queens apartment to a modest but comfortable place closer to the Hunt Initiative offices. And she threw herself into the work with a passion she thought she'd lost when she left her teaching job in Mexico. But the real transformation was Alexander's. True to his word, he hired a private ASL tutor and spent 2 hours every morning learning to sign. He was terrible at first. His fingers fumbled, his grammar was awkward, his facial expressions were all wrong. But he persisted with the same intensity he'd brought to building his business empire. 3 months after that dinner, Alexander sat across from his mother at brunch and signed, haltingly but clearly, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't do this sooner. I'm sorry I tried to fix you instead of listening to you," Catherine cried. Then she signed back, faster than Alexander could follow, and Emma, who'd become a regular presence at family gatherings, translated, "She says you're forgiven. She says she's proud of you. She says this is worth more than all the doctors and treatments combined." The Hunt Initiative's new accessibility program launched 6 months after that fateful dinner. Emma had designed it from the ground up, working with deaf consultants, deaf business owners, deaf artists, and deaf community leaders. They funded ASL classes in public schools. They created job placement programs. They established a grant system for deaf entrepreneurs. They mandated that every company receiving Hunt Initiative funding had to have deaf board members and ASL-accessible communications. But the project closest to Emma's heart was the Restaurant Initiative. Working with 50 restaurants across New York, they trained staff in basic ASL, created visual menus, and established a certification program for deaf-accessible dining. The Sterling Room, ironically, was the first to sign up. A year after their first meeting, Alexander hosted a gala for the foundation's donors and partners. The event was fully accessible: ASL interpreters, visual displays, and haptic feedback systems for music. Half the attendees were deaf. The other half were learning. During his speech, Alexander paused and switched from speaking to signing. Emma, standing off to the side, felt her heart swell with pride at how much he'd learned. "A year ago," he signed and spoke simultaneously, "I thought I understood success. I'd built companies, made money, funded programs, but I was blind to what mattered most. It took a shy waitress with trembling hands to show me that the most valuable thing we can offer another person isn't money or solutions or fixes. It's the willingness to meet them where they are, to speak their language, to truly see them." He looked at his mother, seated in the front row, beaming. "My mother taught me everything except this. I had to learn from Emma what my mother needed most, not a cure, but connection. Not pity, but partnership. Not isolation, but inclusion." Then Alexander did something that surprised everyone, including Emma. He called her up to the stage. "Emma Rodriguez changed my life," he said. "But more importantly, she's changing the world. Because of her vision, thousands of children are learning ASL in schools. Hundreds of businesses are becoming more accessible. Families are learning to communicate. And people like my mother no longer have to sit alone in crowded restaurants, invisible and unheard." He paused, emotion overtaking him. Emma once told me that signing with her brother was how she kept him close after he died. Now, she's helping thousands of families stay close to each other while they're still here. There's no greater gift than that. The standing ovation was both heard and seen. Thunderous applause mixed with the wave-like motion of hands raised and shaking, the deaf community's form of applause. Emma stood on that stage, overwhelmed, thinking about the scared girl who'd almost been too nervous to approach table 7. Later, after the crowds dispersed, Emma found Catherine on the terrace, looking out at the glittering New York skyline. "Thank you," Catherine signed. "For seeing me that night. Thank you for letting me," Emma signed back. "You know what the most beautiful part is?" Catherine continued. "Alexander thinks he hired you to fix problems. But really, you taught him that some things aren't broken. I'm not broken. The deaf community isn't broken. We just speak a different language. And now, finally, people are willing to learn it." Emma smiled. "Your son is a good student." "He's stubborn," Catherine signed with a laugh. "But his heart is in the right place now." As Emma stood there, watching the city lights reflect off Catherine's face, she thought about all the moments that had led here. Her brother's diagnosis. Learning to sign at 7 years old, teaching in Mexico, leaving everything behind to come to America, the humiliation of serving water in a restaurant despite her education, that one moment of courage when she'd approached a lonely woman at table 7. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is reach across the silence and say, "I see you. You're not alone." And sometimes that single act of recognition changes everything, not just for one person, but for thousands who've been waiting their whole lives to be truly seen. Emma never went back to being a waitress, but she never forgot what it felt like to be invisible, to be underestimated, to have so much to offer and nowhere to offer it. That memory informed everything she built, every program she designed, every bridge she constructed between the hearing and deaf worlds. And Alexander never forgot the lesson Emma taught him that night. That the most profound connections happen not when we fix people, but when we're willing to learn their language and meet them exactly where they are.